name is Ray Meyer, and I'm responsible for iSoftStone's Robotic Process Automation Center of Excellence. Welcome to our one-hour webinar, Emerge Resilient and Efficient from COVID-19 by Automating Your Financial Invoices with Artificial Intelligence. I will be walking through a customer use case focused on automation, on automating a manual invoice process. Daniel Lerner from UiPath will be demonstrating the relevant UiPath capabilities to automate these invoices using their current document understanding capabilities and AI. So we've organized the webinar into three key components. I will walk you through a quick introduction to set the stage, and I will continue with the invoice use case, and then hand it over to Daniel for the solution demo that will showcase how UiPath Document Understanding and AI Fabric can be leveraged to automate this invoice use case. As many of you, I'm sure, have felt the pain yourselves, and COVID-19 will magnify challenges and risks associated with business processes, data, and systems. And we believe that COVID-19 will accelerate the drive to automate. We've seen that already over the last 2 or 3 months, and we think that acceleration will actually continue for the foreseeable future. Organizations and businesses need to address these challenges, and we see them occurring in a couple of key areas. One is organization shared services, which includes business areas like finance, procurement, HR, IT, master data, and others. These challenges and risks are magnified even more to the extent an organization is outsourced its shared services to what's called a business process outsourcing partner, or BPO partner. And we'll get into that a little bit when I show you the use case. And another magnifier on top of that is, because of COVID-19, both organizations as well as their vendor partners are working remotely, and that's true both onshore and offshore. So you've got a few things that are really magnifying these challenges and risks. And as I'm sure many of you have read, if not experienced, a lot of companies see their cash flow impacted as well. So that's another area we're going to talk a little bit about in this COVID-19 scenario, where revenues have declined, costs have remained flat, or in some cases, because of additional measures, even increased. What does that mean? That means that organizations need to become more resilient and more efficient to emerge successfully from COVID-19. And that means do more with less. As we've seen companies lay off and furlough their workforce, that means we got to keep going, and we have to do more with less. A lot of our customers that we talk to are fighting to stay in business. So that's a key driver for them. They want to reduce risk. And again, we'll talk a little bit more in detail about what kind of risks their companies and customers are looking to reduce. And very importantly, during this time, also need to improve engagement, and that's both with customers, with employees, as well as with other stakeholders, including, supplier and vendor partners. What we see is a convergence of these challenges and risks with the advancement of both RPA and AI, and in what's known as intelligent automation. And we recommend and encourage organizations and companies to adopt intelligent automation. That enables companies to tackle things like unstructured data, which, looking back maybe 2 years ago, was not a real possibility, a real commercial possibility prior to artificial intelligence and machine learning. It is now, and Daniel will talk a little bit about how UiPath can do that. Need to manage business exceptions and need to manage errors. And again, that's where the combination of RPA and AI will enable customers to adopt this intelligent automation and emerge more resilient and more efficient. And one of the things we'll talk about as well is the human in the loop concept, which is automation that in some scenarios will loop in a human to make certain key decisions or handle certain key exceptions. So I mentioned we'll cover one particular invoice use case, and would like to put this in context for everyone before we do the deep dive into the actual use case and the solution. And some of you may be familiar with the finance supply chain, from procure to pay to order to cash to record to report. Where invoices fit in, the way we're going to talk about, the way I will discuss today, is in the procure to pay area. And you can see highlighted towards the middle of the slide, outlined in red, what that invoice process looks like at a very, very high level. So this is not to spend a lot of time on this slide, but this is just to put this in context. Let's go right to the use case. The use case is it's a made-up use case. It's a theoretical use case that we have put together based on conversations with various customers, particularly in the retail and consumer products or CPG space, where processes in the finance area and the back office are still to a large extent manual, and in many cases outsourced. So this is a little bit of a compendium, if you will, of use cases across several different clients that we're having discussions with. So Fortune 500 retail has outsourced its invoice processing to a BPO partner. The objective is the customer, because of COVID-19, wants to explore potential automation. The current state, and I will share with you on the next slide how manual and convoluted and complex the process is. The current state is that the BPO partner, on behalf of this customer, handles about 10,000 invoices per month. So that's about 120K invoices a year. The process is manual, it's repetitive, it's rules driven, and it's high volume. The manual process, as you'll see, involves extracting data from vendor invoices and entering this data into multiple systems. The BPO partner has a large team that manually handles these invoices, and what we see across customers is typically anywhere from 10 to up to 50 resources to handle this kind of volume of invoices. And the customer edition provides several resources on top of the BPO partner to provide oversight and exception handling. In discussions with our customers, we believe that there's annual savings of somewhere around $1 million to be gained through automation just from this one very simple use case. And as Daniel will describe, this automation solution on UiPath can be scaled across many, many different use cases. So the $1 million annual savings, while it's meaningful, is just a starting point. And the business case that we typically put together with our customers focuses on speed and productivity, reducing operating costs, improving accuracy and compliance. This looks a little bit of a busy slide, and intentionally so, because that's actually the simplified workflow that shows the manual handling of these vendor invoices. So starting to the left with number one, this customer's vendors email their invoices, which can be either digital or scanned, to an accounts payable mailbox. It's literally an Outlook mailbox that is accessible to the BPO partner. So again, think about 10,000 invoices coming in a month. How many emails per day are sent to this Outlook email box? Number two, the BPO partner monitors that mailbox and handles the invoices. That means, opening the emails, extracting the attached document, downloading, saving it. And then number three is, to the extent it's a foreign, i.e. non-English invoice, that has to be translated. And typically we see this is not an automated process. We see copy and paste of invoice fields into Google Translate and copy and pasting that into an Excel worksheet with the translation. Number 4, once that's done, the BPO partner will then start manually inputting these invoices into their workflow systems. And this is where, one of the key risks emanates. We have seen large BPO partners, whether it's a Genpact, a Wipro, someone else, that builds their own homegrown workflow application, which they built and they own. So the customer has no control or ownership over that, business critical application. Now I'll get back to what that means in the event of, a breach of SLAs or customer dissatisfaction and so on. At the same time as the BPO partner is inputting that into the workflow application, they will also input that into typically a procurement system, which then kicks off the entire, invoice processing and payment part of the process. And under number 8, the BPO partner will access a third application, which is usually an archive application, to scan and archive the invoices, because for regulatory and compliance reasons, the customer needs to have a backup of all the invoices that are handled and paid. And very often the BPO partner then has to go back to the procurement system and create a link to where that particular invoice is stored within the archive application. 4, 5, and 8 require some customer oversight, which is number 6, and exception handling, because there may be errors. There could be any time a human enters the same data into multiple systems, there could be differences or reconciliation errors. So customer provides some oversight, and there may be some business exceptions that need to be escalated to the customer. And finally, all this data flows into typically downstream into the customer's ERP. So this just kind of gives you a little bit of a flavor just for a simple invoice handling use case from a business process, data, and system perspective, how manual and how complicated and how risky this is. So let's go back a little bit to the challenges and risks that I mentioned in the introduction. Customers, so starting on the left with speed and productivity, when we help our customers assess what are their desired business outcomes, what are their objectives, what are their pain points and challenges, and help them build a business case, we look at these kind of key parameters. Speed and productivity, as I mentioned, customers are experiencing headcount reductions and need to improve operational efficiency, do more with less. There's no question that automation and the ability to improve efficiency and scale enables a company to have a flat or even downward trending employee workforce while still continuing business business as needed. Operating costs, with COVID-19, there's a huge drive to reduce operating costs, as most everyone knows. And that is basically to realign an organization's or a company's cost structure with lower expected revenue. We've seen, a lot of companies, particularly in the retail and CPG space, announce, lower first quarter revenue and earnings, particularly hard hit second quarter. We don't expect third quarter to be much different. Many companies sustaining losses and again, fighting to stay in business. That means, business as usual is not acceptable and costs need to be brought down. At the same time, we want to talk a little bit about customer experience. In this case, the example here with customer experience in an invoice use case is around vendors. So a lot of these vendors are critical suppliers to our customers and themselves are fighting to stay in business and want to get paid on time. So to the extent that, at retail or CPG or any other customer can automate and improve customer experience by handling those invoices, as expeditiously as possible and making payment, on time, that will definitely improve customer experience, and in some cases help the vendors, some of whom are maybe small or medium-sized businesses, stay in business. Next is accuracy and compliance, and this is increasingly becoming an area that we see our customers leverage automation to improve accuracy and compliance. And it's not just around error handling and reducing errors down to zero in some cases, because anytime a human makes an error, there is additional rework that's required to identify that error, triage it, fix it, et cetera. So that's an additional cost. It improves transparency and compliance. And that's where in the COVID-19 world, we are aware that customers are becoming concerned about fraud. It's more challenging to detect potential fraud when everyone's working remote and we have manual processes and we have multiple parties involved. And so again, automation will reduce that risk substantially. And last but not least is business continuity. And this is, again, where I'd like to get back to the outsourcing and BPO model, where, again, we hear from our customers that because of COVID-19, many customers are rethinking their strategy to outsource to BPO partners some of their finance, supply chain, back office processes, and looking at bringing that back in-house. Of course, it doesn't make sense to do that with humans because there's a increase in cost, which is the first reason the company outsourced that. So insourcing it through automation is a very viable alternative, and will reduce that risk on third-party dependency for, as I mentioned, services and technology and compliance. And we have several customers that are going down that road and saying, we need to bring this back in-house, but we want to do this with RPA and AI. How do we pull all this together, and how do we articulate this business case to our leadership and to our key stakeholders? iSoftStone works with UiPath and with our customers to develop a business case and look at what are the business outcomes, what are the benefits, what are the risks, and here's just a very simple slide that kind of pulls all this together. As I mentioned, just this one simple invoice handling or invoice processing use case, we believe there's about $1 million in potential annual savings, and it's kind of in 3 key areas. So I mentioned speed and productivity, the automating these 10,000 invoices per month, which doesn't include exceptions. Typically, our customers experience anywhere from 10 to 20% to even more business exceptions on this invoice process. These invoices are generated by usually several thousand vendors. So you have the entire onboarding and offboarding of vendors and managing these vendors. Some of these, as I mentioned, are small or medium-sized businesses. So there's definitely gains there. In operating costs, this is really where we calculate that $1 million, and we look at the BPO partner headcount with a very large offshore team, and notwithstanding the maybe lower labor costs offshore, the investment that our customers make and BPO outsourcing is still substantial. We then also have a part-time customer headcount that's allocated that needs to be factored into the cost, and that can be saved to the extent that we can reduce errors and we can reduce business exceptions, and we can insource that and put an automated process with transparency in place. It should reduce the customers' oversight on something like this. And then what we didn't include in $1 million was any kind of system and services benefit. So typically, again, if the BPO vendor goes away, the workflow system can be retired, no longer needed. The translation service, as Daniel will describe, can be fully automated. So that's not needed. And obviously a procurement system will still be central and critical to the end-to-end process, and same with the archive system for regulatory purposes. And then just to, on the far right again, to come back to the accuracy and compliance, is we mentioned the typically 10, 20 plus more business exceptions that can be automated. That's a huge volume on top of the standard 10,000 a month or so. And then we see error rates that are actually, with human errors, fairly high. Anytime data entry, copy and paste from an invoice or from an Excel is done into multiple systems. So this is a very quick transition slide to hand it over to Daniel Lerner from UiPath, who's my co-presenter, just to kind of set the stage for what he's going to share with you a little bit. This is a visual simplified to show what an end-to-end automated workflow solution looks like to automate invoice handling. So at the top is a abstract of the UiPath platform that shows the end-to-end capabilities, from discovering the automation opportunities to building the automations to managing those automations to operationalizing and running the bots to engaging humans where we need to, and I mentioned the human in loop, to analytics and reports, to measuring operations, as well as the ROI and the business outcomes. And then at the bottom, we've just very quickly shown you, and I think Daniel will highlight this during his part, is the document understanding and action center, which are going to be two key things, two key capabilities that he will share with you. And it's just a very quickly kind of process from document understanding, loading the taxonomy for the data, digitizing invoices, classifying those, and then extracting the data, and then using Action Center to the extent necessary, bringing human in a loop and validating. Some of the validation can be automated. Hopefully a lot of it can. In some cases, there may still be a human that needs to validate through Action Center. And then, exporting or publishing that data to the downstream systems. Thank you for staying with me and allowing me to share this with you. And Daniel, are you ready to go?
Hey, Rado, before we go to Daniel, we have a poll question.
Yeah, sorry, let's go through the polls. Yeah, let's take maybe a couple minutes, to run a couple of the polls. So if you guys can just, we're gonna pop up 2 or 3 very simple, quick snap polls. Apologies for skipping through those. But if you can just quickly vote on that, be appreciated. Where is your organization in its RPA journey? And it looks like fairly evenly split across already using RPA or considering RPA in the next 12 months, with a small number saying it's not a priority for their organization. Yeah, let's do another one, guys, if we can. How much of your procurement, accounting, and finance processes are automated? Can we share the results from that second poll? Wow, okay. So looks like the majority are either less than 50%, almost half the people said less than 50%, and a large percent said 35%, right? And this is very consistent with what the analysts are reporting, is that anywhere from 20 plus or minus % of the finance supply chain, including procurement, accounting, and finance, has been automated. So we do see there's a lot of opportunities and a lot of scope. Yeah, let's do the last one. And then Daniel, we've saved one for you, at the end of your presentation. So go ahead, Brad. One last one, and then Daniel will go. Prior to this webinar, have you heard about AI and machine learning and to be used to automate business processes? Not whether you've heard about AI, but to actually in its use to automate business processes. Wow, okay. So 84% have responded yes, and a few folks have responded no or not sure. Very interesting. Thank you for responding and sharing that with us. And Daniel, I think you're gonna share some very cool new stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna unshare.
Thanks. So hey everyone, my name is Daniel Lerner. I'm a pre-sales technical consultant here at UiPath. So hopefully in these next 20 or so minutes, I'll be able to showcase some cool capabilities as part of the UiPath platform that are going to show how we do intelligent document processing and utilize artificial intelligence and machine learning to solve use cases like the one that Rado walked us through. Just to level set, can everyone see my screen? It should just be a sample invoice, right?
Yep, you're good to go.
Okay, thanks, Brett. So just to start off with the use case I'll be walking through, the demonstration. The goal of this use case is to process some invoices in an intelligent and easy manner. And right here, I have 3 sample invoices that we're going to be trying to extract information for. Each of these invoices have pieces of information that are of importance to us, such as the invoice number, the PO number, the date, the actual invoice details, and we'll also note that these are different formats, each one. And so this isn't a scenario where we would be able to use solely a template-based approach. We're going to see how the UiPath Document Understanding platform and framework will be able to accommodate to these different formats and scale up any actual RPA operation that uses or is trying to solve intelligent document processing. All right, so now we're taking a look at this. We are going to walk through within the UiPath development environment, those 6 steps, or how we actually implement those 6 steps that Rado was showing on that one slide. We're going to see how the actual catalog of documents, that taxonomy that Rado mentioned, is actually loaded in for our digital robots to utilize. We'll actually see how we classify documents and determine just what kind of document we're looking at, whether it's an invoice or a purchase order. And we should be seeing those steps on the screen right now. And then also we'll see the different tools we can utilize in order to actually extract information from those documents. So not just not just using the traditional rules as seen before, but a more modern-based approach that utilizes artificial intelligence and machine learning. And then we'll also be able to see how those results or those predictions are demonstrated to a user when desired. And we'll see a couple methods for that. And then lastly, we'll be able to export that information downstream for the robots to further process and put them into the appropriate systems. I think someone mentioned in the chat, but if at any point you have a question, please feel free to comment that in the chat, and then we'll be collecting those and answering them and sending those out after the webinar. Cool, so let's get into it. So the first step that I want to dive into is this digitized document step. And I think I actually forgot to mention this before, but this is one of the first steps for actually going through and implementing the document understanding framework. What this enables a user to do and what it allows us to do is actually to convert images or scans of documents into machine readable text, into a format that the robot can properly ingest and actually make some sense of. So one of the nice things about the UiPath Document Understanding framework is that we've allowed users and developers to be able to select the optical character recognition engine, the OCR engine, that works best for their use case. And so what this means is that if I wanted to swap OCR engines and use one that I thought served my use case better, very easily I can drag and drop or plug and play the OCR engine of my choice into the activities or the tools in this development environment, and then utilize the power of that selected OCR engine. So being very easily being able to select which OCR engine in order to convert that information into machine readable text is one of the benefits of the document understanding framework. And that was our digitized document step, so just converting that information into machine readable text for our robots to ingest. The next step is actually called the classify document scope step, being able to perform some classification for what kind of a document the robot is currently looking at. And this is important because instead of having to create a workflow where we're only processing invoices, or create a workflow where we only can process purchase orders or utility bills, I can utilize one workflow in order to process all those document types. And the prerequisite for that is just making sure that I provide my robot the information for determining what defines an invoice and what defines a purchase order, the respective document types that I might be looking for. That definition of document types, or that building of a catalog of document types, is done through what we call our Taxonomy Manager, and that'll be popping up here in a second. This Taxonomy Manager is where that catalog is defined, and we can see here there's a list of defined documents. This is a little different than defining templates, because as opposed to actually specifying where information is on a document and kind of specifying position-based templates, this is just specifying the fields, or the pieces of information that are critical for your business process or your use case that you want to extract from any format of that document type. So here we know that we want to extract these 10 or so fields from any invoice we see, regardless of the format. And I could say the same thing for purchase orders, right? This purchase order document type is defined with a different set of fields. And knowing that definition, or that schema, once I define my catalog, my robot can utilize that in order to make a classification or decision on what kind of a document I'm looking at currently. And the way that it understands what kind of a document it's looking at is through tools that we call classifiers. Those classifiers are powerful mechanisms that will actually look at the contents of the document, and based on previous training or previous knowledge that's been built up from the robots looking at these same kinds of documents, it will be able to make a prediction or a judgment on what kind of a document it's currently looking at. And in our scenario, we'll see that in action. We'll see how our robot is able to determine that the document it's currently looking at is an invoice. Moving along, we have this data extraction scope. This is for that extract step as part of the document understanding framework. The data extraction scope is really powerful because it's what's going to be enabling the actual pulling of information from documents. So one key thing is using OCR engines to actually convert that information and make sure that someone or something can read it. But the next step is actually extracting the critical pieces of information in an intelligent manner. And what the UiPath Document Understanding Framework allows is the ability to utilize a variety of tools that we call extractors. And we'll go further in depth in this. We use these extractors in order to perform extraction via rules-based methods, which is a more traditional method, or using machine learning, more modern-based approach. And we can see a couple examples here, right? In my workflow, I have this intelligent form extractor, which is going to be able to really hone in on a certain template or a certain set of templates and really know how to extract information from those templates well. But for certain formats that don't fit this category, I can utilize one of the machine learning extractors or one of our out-of-the-box machine learning models in order to make predictions and actually extract information that way. And one of the nice things is that each of these machine learning models has been trained through deep learning on hundreds, thousands of documents, and it uses that knowledge base in order to make accurate predictions for where the invoice number is, for where the purchase order number is, for where your critical pieces of information reside in the document, whether it's the same format or whether they're actually hundreds of formats. Moving along, I'll jump back to our main flow here. Once we have those extracted predictions, those results, that then gets displayed in a window that we call a validation station. And I'll actually run this workflow right now so we can see what that looks like. That validation station is going to enable a couple things. You can either use it as a desktop-based validation method, where as a user, I can run a robot that is loaded on my computer and then see the actual results that were extracted from the input document. or we'll also see how I as a user can log into a web portal and perform the same validation. So let me bring this up to the screen. And so one thing we see here is the input document that we saw at the beginning of our demonstration, right? And now in our window, which is the validation station, I see the actual predicted results from one, my classify step. So here we have a prediction that this is an invoice. And then for each of the fields defined in my taxonomy or my catalog, I see an associated prediction for the information residing in the actual document. So we see here this PO number, the 95% confidence level was extracted as MP7400673, right? Which matches up with what is on the document. And as a user, right, I'm able to see these results and make any changes if necessary. If I'm happy with those results, then I can leave it how it is. And then I can actually confirm that those extracted results are correct. In addition to this validation step, you can add logic into your workflow so that this validation only pops up or appears to the user when certain thresholds are met. So one of the nice things is you can actually utilize these confidence levels for each of these critical fields and pop up the validation station only when necessary, right? And that way, if the confidence levels are high enough and you have, and you don't necessarily need to perform validation on every single document, then you can have the robot perform that processing and only validate the ones where the confidence levels are low or don't meet that certain threshold. Or you might have some business rules where are not met. Cool. And in addition to invoice level details, I also want to highlight that the machine learning models, those out-of-the-box models, are able to also extract information at a line item level detail. So we see here that for this table on this invoice, we have a description and we have a fee or an amount, and we see that information being extracted in these two columns here. Not only can we see this, that I mentioned before, in a desktop-based manner, but I want to highlight how we can actually jump to our browser and within our browser perform this same level of validation through human-in-the-loop capability. This is something that Rado mentioned before. And that human-in-the-loop capability is enabled through a tool that we call Action Center. Action Center is going to be kind of a home base for any business user to go to and actually view certain tasks or items that they need to take action on. And so we see here my list of actions that need some sort of validation or some form of human input. And I can take a look at this first action and see, let's actually refresh the page and log in. All right, 1 second, team. And let's jump back to here. All right, and then let's go back to our Action Center. Okay, so this action, this task, this task item is going to be the same experience that we saw on our desktop. So we see here the same invoice, but instead of this being run on your desktop in an attended manner, this can be processed initially, or a batch of documents can be processed initially by an unattended robot. And then whenever necessary, right, when certain thresholds aren't met, the unattended robot can send these to the appropriate work queue or the appropriate action item queue. And then I, as a user, can come in, take some action on this document by assigning it to myself, validating the extracted items and making any changes if necessary. And then once I confirm these results, my orchestrator or my central manager is going to communicate with my pool of digital workers, my pool of robots, and say, hey, Daniel just finished this item, this task, go ahead and continue processing this information downstream. And one of the benefits here is that the robot, whenever a robot kicks this out to Action Center, it's still able to process other pieces of work. So it's not waiting for you to finish all of these jobs. It's still able to churn through, right, any other automations or processes that need to be run. And then once I complete each of these items, orchestrator, the central manager that Action Center resides in is able to communicate with those robots and alert it when it needs to resume the process that this action item was tied to. All right, and once these items are each processed, that's where we actually allow the robot to process that information downstream. That could be to the appropriate ERP system, something as simple as a CSV file, you know, the target systems that you all want this information input into. All right, before we jump to AI Fabric, I want to show a quick slide just to discuss the extraction portion again real quick. So we saw, right, in the entire document understanding framework, this concept of an extractor. And those extractors are used to extract information from a document. The methods that those extractors are tied to could either be rule-based, where we see, you know, these three in blue, or model-based. The rule-based ones are going to be more of a template-based approach, where you're looking for certain patterns or you're looking for information in certain positions of the documents. Those can be very powerful when you know that common format. And then you have the model-based approach, which is where you saw that machine learning extractor, or what I mentioned, the out-of-the-box models. And those provide a lot of benefit because often in intelligent document processing use cases, you have various formats. You have not just one common structure that you need to accommodate to. And so utilizing those out-of-the-box models that have been trained on hundreds in a large document base and have gathered that kind of knowledge repository is going to help enable better predictions and better accuracy rates when extracting information from these kinds of documents. And the key differentiator here is I'm not limited as a user to just using either rule-based or model-based approach, right? The UiPath document understanding framework allows you to use a hybrid approach. So you can actually combine rule-based and model-based extractors on a field-by-field basis. So for example, if I have my invoice number field, and I know that it's always going to be in the same position, right? Or I know it's followed a certain pattern, I can maybe use my regular expressions-based extractor to target that pattern. But on the scenarios where it doesn't follow that pattern, I can utilize a machine learning extractor that is tied to the invoices out-of-the-box model in order to serve as a fallback mechanism and actually extract information that way. And that's one of the beauties, is that you provide multiple mechanisms to actually get that information as opposed to just targeting one of these. All right, I'll jump to this next slide just to talk again about that concept of a templateless approach, which is what we see with these machine learning models. And you know, the templateless approach, the machine learning models that we have currently are tied to certain document types like invoices, purchase orders, receipts, and utility bills. In addition to that, you can also bring your own model by using a third-party model that integrates with UiPath, or you can even create your own custom model. And we're going to see how we actually create a custom model using a tool that we call AI Fabric. So let's jump into that real quick. And so for example, I'll pull up these documents again. For some reason on this document, right, I want to create a custom model to extract a certain piece of information that the out-of-the-box models did not provide for. I can take these documents, these sample documents, and import them into a tool that we call Data Manager. And that's what we're seeing here in our browser. This Data Manager tool is going to enable you to label these documents. And so right now we have these gray squares around each of the items, right? As a user, I'm able to label these documents. And so, for example, I'll tell the tool what the purchase order number is, right? By labeling it or coloring it. And I can perform this for a variety of fields, right? In addition to manually labeling it, we also offer the ability to actually use our out-of-the-box models to make predictions and accelerate your labeling process. And so now I have information pre-labeled for me, and I can fill in the gaps when necessary. And one of the key things about this labeling step is It's going to help provide the information needed to train our custom model. I like to think of it as it's labeling data is similar to showing someone the right way to fish, right? If I teach someone how to fish, over time, they're going to learn what particular details they should be looking for as they fish, and they're going to learn a little bit or a lot of it about fishing, depending on how long you teach them for. Similar to labeling data, our modeling is going to become better at learning the characteristics or the details of these invoices or whatever document type you want to extract data from, the more labels or data that we provided. So once we perform this labeling step for all of our documents, we're able to export these documents, and we'll get a nice little zip file here. This is where we can take that labeled data, and we'll need, with that data, we'll need 2 data sets, one being a training and one being a testing set. And that batches or that split is specified by the user. We'll be able to go to this tool we call AI Fabric, and then actually start to go through the model creation process. And following these 4 steps is going to actually allow you to create a very powerful model. We've really abstracted the data science requirements from creating a powerful tool. All a user needs to do is actually upload that data set or those data sets they exported from Data Manager. In my scenario, I already have 2 here, one being a training data set for invoices that's going to populate our model and provide that knowledge base. The other is a test data set we're going to use to evaluate the performance of the trained model. And once I upload that data set, those data sets, I'm then going to create a package. This package can be uploaded via zip file, or you can actually select one of the document understanding packages that is based on one of the out-of-the-box models we offer. Whether it could be purchase orders, receipts, utility bills, or invoices, or you can use something that is a generic document understanding model. In our scenario, we're going to be using an invoices model, and I already have one created here. I have a few created here. We're going to be focusing on this invoices custom model. Right. Once that package or this container for our model that is to be trained is created, this is where we want to combine the data set that we uploaded and start to create our model using that data. And that mechanism that we're going to run in order to actually populate that package with information is through a pipeline. And this concept of a pipeline is going to allow us to actually create a powerful model. The way we do that is we create what we call a full pipeline. And when we say full, it just means that we're going to perform training and we're going to perform evaluation, which just means testing. And so if I do a full pipeline run, I select my package that I want to populate with information. I then select certain version that I'm looking for. Right? I'm going to select the base model version. And then I need to select 2 data sets. The data set that I'm going to train my model on, right, and start building that knowledge base, and the data set that I'm going to actually perform the evaluation on and determine whether or not my model is successful or whether I need to actually provide more labels and perform some more training. And so if we jump back to our pipelines, we see that one, right, this invoices custom model has already gone through a full training and evaluation. And we actually got a pretty high score with about a 97% accuracy rate for the model, for the data that it was trained on, right? Using that evaluation or that testing data set that we provided earlier. Once I'm comfortable with this score, or the results of my model, right? You won't always get 97%. This is pretty high, but every use case has its own threshold. Once it meets your current threshold and you're ready to deploy and publish your model, you can then create what we call an ML skill. And an ML skill is just going to serve as a published or ready to use machine learning model. And this means that you're now exposing this model to your digital workforce, to your robot. And so I'll jump to, if we focus on this invoices custom machine learning skill, I'll jump back to Studio and we'll see how in the data extraction scope, I can actually pull in this invoices custom machine learning skill as opposed to using the machine learning skill that has no training, right? No actual custom model creation. I can use the machine learning skill that was published and deployed here. And so that is, how we see the end-to-end, right, custom model creation when you have use cases that out-of-the-box models don't necessarily fit completely. And so you start from specifying your critical pieces of data, you export that labeled data, upload it into AI Fabric, and that is where you walk through those 4 steps to create, train, and evaluate the model, and then deploy it so that your robot can then utilize it within the actual workflow for your intelligent document processing use case. I know we're running a little short on time here, so I just want to wrap up with a quick slide on the intelligent document processing and document understanding framework. So, I hope this demonstration has shown how document understanding, UiPath document understanding, is a solution for those intelligent document processing use cases, and how it has a number of benefits, right? It's flexible. It offers a combination of different approaches to process different types and formats of documents. It's intelligent, owing to the robot's ability to utilize a variety of tools and to accurately classify documents and extract information. That's going to lead to a reduction in human error. That's going to ensure compliance goals. And that's going to reduce the amount of time that employees are going to have to spend on rework. And then it's an end-to-end solution, right? It's going to help enable users to automate complex processes and really allow them to use that with AI and ML without requiring a data science degree or background. And that's really going to make a difference when you receive and process documents. And last but not least, right, the open and extensible framework is going to allow you to very easily use your own OCR engine of choice, your own classifier of choice and extractor. That's going to help open up possibilities for any automation workflow. And so with that, I'll pass it back to the iSoftStone guys. Thank you everyone for your time.
Thanks. That was great. Thanks very much, Daniel. So appreciate it. I know we're out of time. Perfect ending. And Brad, you want to post one last poll? So very cool results, right? So almost half of the folks voted for the out-of-the-box machine learning model as the feature that excites them the most, with hybrid being a second. So thanks again, everyone, and hope you got something out of it, and we'll follow up shortly. Thank you. Bye-bye.